everyone, and welcome to the Bitcoin halving event hosted here at CryptoMood. This was an event that we wanted to do live in Prague at first. However, unfortunately, I'm sure a lot of you will find this relatable. We had to cancel a lot of the plans as well due to the coronavirus pandemic. And I hope you're all staying safe out there. Now, we have a really exciting agenda on the table for tonight. Nonetheless, so the show must go on. We're going to be talking about the Bitcoin halving, of course, and all the ramifications it's going to have on the cryptocurrency markets, on mass adoption, so on and so forth. And we got a lot of interesting perspectives coming at you tonight. So first, we have Faris Talib. He is a crypto venture capitalist. He has basically a lot of experience with CVVC, Crypto Valley Venture Capitalist. He's been involved in the cryptocurrency communities for a very long time, since 2013, as I found out before in our little pre-conversation chat. So he was here for the last two halvings. We'll definitely be hearing a lot of interesting things from him. We have Luis Pluning from Indicoin, which here at CryptoMood, we had another interesting conversation with them a couple podcasts ago. So definitely going to talk about how that's going to impact exchanges and his perspective on the halving. And of course, our very own Amir Mamagani, talk about CryptoMood, our lovely app, artificial intelligence, what it's picking up on, and how we think it will affect, or be affected rather, by the Bitcoin halving. So without much further ado, guys, let's get started. If any of you want to add anything else before we start or introduce yourself, feel free. Otherwise, is it all right if I just go ahead and start with Faris here?
Absolutely, we can do that.
All right, okay. So Faris, we talked a little bit before the event, and you mentioned you had been involved in cryptocurrency since 2013. Why don't you start off by talking a bit about like what specifically got you interested in investing or starting working with CVVC and how that experience has been for you?
So before CVVC, I was in Germany for a year. And as you know, there were lots of refugees from Syria. And one refugee from Syria, he was actually my friend. And what happened to him is that his mom needed to go to the hospital in Damascus. And we could not send money to Damascus. Neither Deutsche Bank, Commerzbank, Sparkasse, and none of them accepted a transfer to that country. And we were searching for any way to send money to. And that's the way we stumbled upon Bitcoin. And we started buying Bitcoin, which was pretty cheap at that time. And we found a doctor in Damascus that accepted those coins as money so that his mom could be, I would say, do her operation. And what's great now is that his mom now lives with him in Germany, in Frankfurt. And I mean, without Bitcoin, without this freedom, it would not have happened. Maybe she would have been dead. So if you talk to me about Bitcoin, it's not about money or about anything else. It's more about the actual future and freedom of people.
Okay, wow, that's incredible. And just personally, let's be honest, we're all somewhat interested in the money aspect as well. I'm not going to pretend like I'm not, but the main reason for me getting into it was just, as you said, seeing all these poor people around the world, a lot of them who have no access to banks and who desperately need this technology, especially in this time we're living in right now. Just really quickly, how's your friend doing today? Is he all right? Everything okay with him, his mom and everything?
It's perfect. Now he has a family in Germany and living good, so.
Okay, great. So wow, we have a real life example here. Hope you are all tuning into this of how Bitcoin has literally saved lives. And I think it's important to remember this because we hear a lot of like demonization from the media. We hear a lot about how it's used for criminal activity and so on and so forth. So basically to hear that there's another side of the coin. It's literally saved lives here, as Faris can personally attest to. Now, we talked a bit about, before the event, and you mentioned you've been involved in cryptocurrency since 2013. So you witnessed the last two halving events. So I really wanted to get your opinion on this. What do you think, in general, the impact of the halving is in terms of mining, trading, and just your opinions, your thoughts on the Bitcoin halving in general?
So the most important thing everyone asks me always is the price going to increase, right? That's what most of the people are interested in. So if you look at it historically, the first halving, after 1 year exactly, the price increased around 2,000%, right? The second halving, another year passed by and it increased around 238%. So if you look at historically charts, it makes sense to say that Bitcoin, from let's say this halving 1 year after it, like 365 days, would increase dramatically in price. But in the end, it's more about supply and demand, right? Because if you look at economics 101, you're looking at the more supply there is, the less, if there's not so much demand, there's going to be a decrease in price. And now what's happening with the halving is that Bitcoin supply is decreasing, right? And the other thing is that's happening is that there's so much more news about Bitcoin. It's more institutionalized. There's more demand. So if you think about it just logically and looking at the historical charts, the two last happenings, we're looking at something that has a higher probability of increasing in price. Now, the actual price, we don't really know. What is it, a million? Is it 10,000? 15,000? But it just shows us and means that Bitcoin is not going away. It has been declared that 300 times, and it's going to be declared that even more. But history is with us currently, and technology is with us too. So that's a big answer to your question. And I would say if you look at only the price, it doesn't really make sense. Look at other things like how people can use it for freedom and those things. And now you have 3 points, which is less supply, higher demand, and good usage. And this, I would say, can everyone watching us now or listening can make his own idea of what's going to happen.
Okay. So great points you made there. Now I want to clarify something. I'd like you to elaborate a little further on some specifics regarding the halving, especially for those of our audience who may be new to crypto. So when we're talking about the halving, it's not like the actual amount of Bitcoins get cut in half. It's the new supply that are being created get cut in half. Now, talk a little bit about how that impacts the price, because you mentioned supply and demand. It's not like, suddenly the Bitcoins are cut in half and they're a lot more scarce. It's just the new ones that are being mined are a lot harder to make. So is it more just like a pure market supply and demand level, or do you think there's some intrinsic value, like people now see the Bitcoins as being something more rare and therefore it's something that is it more of a market psychological thing, or is it more of just like pure economics, I guess is my question.
So if you talk about logic, there's nothing logical about Bitcoin. Right?
Yes.
It's something new, and it's really, you can't put logic on it. But in the end, when I say less supply, I mean the miners will have less to sell, right? And so from 12.5 to 6.25 Bitcoin per block. Now, let's say you need $10,000 to be breaking even, right? And now this 6.25 will not net you $10,000, which means the miners are not breaking even. So logically, the price needs to increase so that everyone in the game gets his profit, right? So here's the main idea what I talk about.
Okay, makes sense. And I did read that, well, it varies country to country, obviously, but let's say on average, if you had to give your best estimating guess, what would you say the average cost is to mine a Bitcoin, all things considered? Electricity, equipment, so on and so forth today.
Oh, so it depends. It's hugely dependable. But there are some factors that go into it. You need cooling, right? You need machinery, you need electricity. So let's say if you're mining in, I don't know, Switzerland, it's going to cost you even more what it costs currently. But if you mine in, a third world country where there's cheaper electricity and it's cold, then it's not going to cost you more than $2,000-3,000, right? So it really depends where you get it in the end. And if you're taxed on it, if you're not taxed, and so on.
Right. Okay. So basically, just to quickly summarize for our audience out there. So as Faris just mentioned, the price varies from country to country. However, general idea is the price of a lot of people when they're trading, and I learned this back in 2008, is that Bitcoin generally, there are exceptions, but generally it doesn't go below how much it costs to mine a Bitcoin. And if you remember in the early days, it was a lot easier, a lot cheaper to mine it. Now, after every halving, it's not just the supply that gets cut in half, but the difficult of mining it doubles as well. So because of that, just due to the fact that it's more difficult to mine it and it's going to cost more to mine a single Bitcoin, that in and of itself should theoretically result in a price rise. Is that pretty much, would you say that's a pretty accurate summary?
I would say so, yeah. But there's
Okay.
always another side of it because the two halvings before, we did not have this huge derivatives market in Bitcoin or cryptocurrency.
Mhm.
And this is also something else because the market is way bigger than, how much is traded on derivatives and indexes is higher than the actual amount of Bitcoin. So that will
Yes.
move the price too. Like the two halvings before, we did not have that, right?
Hmm.
So Bitcoin now can crash with the economy if, COVID-19 strikes again or something happens. And here's this is the dark side currently, which everyone's thinking about. Is it now the derivatives market is too big now that can affect Bitcoin's actual goal or not?
Right, right. Which it makes sense because, yeah, clearly it's not 2016 and it's not 2012 and it's certainly not 2008 anymore. Where I remember back then, a lot of people still thought Bitcoin was a scam. Now we have, as you said, all these derivatives, all these institutional investors kicking in. Now, it's interesting you bring that up because I kind of wanted to ask you about a second point regarding this. Because, yeah, a lot of people obviously were more dependent on traditional financial systems and big banks and whatnot. Um, just really quickly, what's your take? Because there's a lot of theories about people. Some people think Bitcoin's going to do really well with this pandemic that we're in because it's supposed to be a safe haven. It's being hyped as like a digital gold, and there's others who think that since we're living in a pandemic, people are going to panic sell and people are going to sell out their Bitcoin and Bitcoin's actually going to do worse. Now, before you answer, no one in the audience take this as financial advice, guys. This is all just our personal opinions, so just have to get that disclaimer out of the way. But Faris, what's your personal opinion on how do you think, especially halving's going to play out in combination with this pandemic that we're living in right now?
So if you think about it, every halving, every drop in Bitcoin, there's going to be people selling, right? I mean, the price doesn't really matter. It's the goal where it's headed. I mean, as long as people are selling and it's decreasing in price and it's moving, it shows that it's alive. Like think
Right.
about the positive. We look at the glass fully. So if it's positive, people are moving Bitcoin, using Bitcoin, and so on. That's way more positive than just being traded on the market as financial. But in the
Yeah,
end,
absolutely.
no one can say where the price is going. I mean, personally, and I hope that also everyone doesn't really care about where the price is going, but where Bitcoin is going as something we can use in the end.
Okay, and on the sorry, are you finished? I cut
Yeah,
you off.
yeah.
All right. So I just wanted to follow up on that. So on the subject of like adoption, actually, I believe that's what you're getting at here. There are some critics now who are saying that like, okay, we're not in 2012 anymore. Back when you first started investing, where it was just some fringe guys on the internet using Bitcoin. It's like millions of transactions now. And back in 2017, when we had that massive bull run after the last halving, we ran into a lot of technical limitations, and people quickly found out Bitcoin wasn't really entirely viable for mass scale adoption if we're not talking about just the price. And so I guess my question to you this time is, do you think that's going to be an issue? Because, the last time we quickly found out that Bitcoin couldn't scale well enough to keep up with all the crazy record transactions we were having that time. I don't think Lightning Network has developed that much. Do you see a scalability solution to where Bitcoin can actually feasibly use as some, a global adoption currency? Or do you think it's going to just be more like a digital gold kind of thing?
So I personally don't think as Bitcoin as an actual currency that you will use to buy coffee or whatever, right? It's more of something which has a high intrinsic value for you to be free and use it once you need it. So there are lots of countries that need Bitcoin and others that don't need. So Switzerland, we don't really need Bitcoin here because our banking system is really, highly technology advanced and it's really free. But on the other hand, if you look at Venezuela, it's not. And that's where you need it. So in the end, you don't really need it to buy coffee, you need it for something else. And that's the main idea in the end.
Right. So yeah, and this kind of goes back to your original experience with your friend in Syria, which brings us to the harsh reality that there are many countries and societies around the world who definitely need something like this. So great point. All right, so let's before we wrap this up, I just would like to give you some time. I understand you work for Crypto Valley Venture Capital. Would you like to spend some time talk about what you guys do? What any projects you're particularly excited about? Fill us in a bit on your own projects.
Absolutely. So I have a presentation ready, which I would like to present, which would be awesome, I think. Let's do it.
Yeah.
I hope you can see it.
Okay.
Is it available or?
I don't see it, but maybe that's just the rest of you see it. Let me see. Okay. Sorry. Are you guys able to see the presentation? I don't see.
I can see it. No.
You can see it. Okay.
All right, then.
Okay.
Let's talk a little bit about CVVC and what we do, which should be a little bit interesting. So basically, what I do at CVVC is advisory, right? And it's just a next generation investment firm where blockchain, meets technology and the traditional investment capital, right? And CVVC follows a strategic, I would say, systematic investment approach to the Swiss and global blockchain ecosystem. And those three things that I have here on the slides, advisory, incubation, top 50, are the main things where I help with. And advisory is, we advise blockchain companies, specifically startups or already formed ones, in business plans, financial plans, and so on, and how to help them. Because usually blockchain companies have people which are more tech than finance and business, management, management sciences, and so on. And on the other hand, incubation, now we have around 27 portfolio companies which we incubated. And I think there's another one this year starting September. And you can also apply on our website for incubation. You will get a really good training and investment from our team at CVVC. And the main thing, which is really interesting, is the top 50 report, which we calculate the value and market share and how many employees there are in the crypto valley, and do this every year twice. So there's another one coming in July, and then we had another one in January. And the current crypto valley system is valued around 25 billion US dollars, which is pretty huge for something new. So that's more about CVVC. If you want to know more, you can always contact me or talk to me about it. There's also one more thing that I like to talk about is in the halving, right? Because we talked about supply and demand and how high supply and low demand, low supply, high demand. If the viewers don't really understand the economy or things like that, you don't really need to. You can look at this chart and just see how it works. The higher the supply we have, the less demand there will be, and then the price will decrease and so on. And this would be a good place where you can see for yourself, without any financial help or anything, where you think Bitcoin is going to go. Like, it's very simple. You don't really need a huge background on that, right? So I hope I answered your question about CVVC. And
okay,
yeah.
Sounds interesting. I actually have a few personal friends of myself who are interested in starting crypto projects, so that'll be definitely something I have to share. Now, so for those, perhaps there's someone out there in our audience who has some idea or would like to get in touch with you somehow. What's the best way to do that?
So you can contact me on LinkedIn. I'm always available. You can also contact me on my email on CVVC. I'll share it at the end of this meeting. And I'm always happy to talk to people about this. Like, it's really interesting to see the ideas that people have and what they're doing. And hopefully we can help them, accomplish everything they want.
Absolutely. And it's great to hear that, we were talking before the show about the early investors are now helping out and given back to the system, which is absolutely great. So, all right, yeah, we'll be sure to include your contact information so anyone can reach out to you. And I believe I saw your guys' website earlier today. It looks really cool. So we'll be sure to include that as well. All right, so thank you a lot, Luis. Or sorry, Faris. I keep getting your names confused. I'm really sorry. So thanks a lot. I learned a lot. If any of you in the audience have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. We'll definitely go over them in the end. We'll have a little Q&A at the end. So all right, thanks again, Faris. So we'll move on to Luis now. Now I will actually be talking to Luis. Luis, how you doing?
Hi, Ezra. I'm pretty good. How you doing yourself?
Great, great. All things considered, can't complain. So you, as I understand, are working with Indocoin. Is that correct?
Correct. I'm the growth director of Indacoin. I've been in the crypto industry for a little bit more than 4 years. I started actually just doing brokerage for mining machines, buy and sell. And then I moved to work to different exchanges, take care of the listing, of the fees. And I ended up, I'm helping now the Indacoin team to develop the new markets and get more adoption in the crypto industry, you know.
Okay, and how long have you been invested in crypto? Or I shouldn't say invested, but how long have you, let's say, been interested in crypto? When did you get into it?
Well, I got into like interested a long way back. I saw an article on Wire magazine, I believe in starting 2012 or 2013, and I got really interested in the project. But like really like full time, I believe like four years ago, I started getting into actually working on it. For me, it's really crazy, starting from the blockchain technology to how the financial markets are gonna develop. It's what it brings me to this industry, you know, and that's why I'm within the coin because with them starting in 2014, we're already 6 years in the market, and we were the first to implement the payment with credit cards to get crypto, even early stage, you know. In 2014 there were not so many platforms that you can get crypto buying crypto with Visa and MasterCard, and we started to develop that and including different partners with us, and now we have more than 180 coins in our portfolio and 12 fiat currencies. So we're really excited about what it's going to bring this halving for us.
Okay, interesting. And so if it's been around for 6 years, then that means you were around and you experienced the last halving as well. So why don't I'm reading in your notes in the notes here that basically in the previous halving Indocoin was around, and what was that like? Was there as much hype behind it? Was everyone, or was it kind of like unexpected? Like, well, what was the experience like the past having events you had at Indocoin?
Well, we can take it. I would like to explain it like in like short term, medium term, and long term. Usually, this happened on the previous halving. On the short term, there is a little bit of decrease on the price, but in the medium term, like as Perez said before, 9 months after the halving, there is a really big increase in demand of Bitcoin, and that corresponds to like a spike on the price, like getting to all-time highs. So I believe for this halving, something similar is gonna happen on it. There is different factors that makes a difference, contrary to previous halving, and that is for sure the coronavirus situation. And also, like we have 4 years of technological development and platforms, and the whole industry has evolved in 4 years. So there is like a lot of wallets and a lot of adoption that can change. So I believe in the medium term, let's say 9 months from the halving, there will be probably an all-time high. That's what is expected
Wow.
based on the previous two. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So that's my personal opinion. Like it is,
Of
it has
course.
been like that in the past. Keep in mind now the mining business has changed. You know, there is the construction of two mega mining factories in Texas. Right now, because of the coronavirus, a lot of mining machines have been consolidated in China. They cannot be shipped. So right now, China has a lot of consolidation of mining equipment and hash rate. And just last week, just this weekend, we hit the all-time high on hash rate. So if you compare it from last halving, we have an increase of 100 times of
Wow.
hash rate in mining. Yeah, yeah. So the last halving, we have 1.5 exahashes. Right now, it's around 140 exahashes. So you see the development on technology, which will take like all machines, like the S9, which is the most used machine on mining, it will be obsolete, and that changed the market a lot. So there is a lot of things that are involved in in this halving. Bitcoin is at 6.25, which is barely above 11% of the value that it was when it first got mined. So supply and demand, it's gonna be really competitive, and I believe we're expecting really high raises, but in a medium term, long term, I believe so.
Okay, wow. So we just have had our first prediction of the evening. Of course, nobody
That's
take this
great.
as financial advice again, just to
Yeah,
have it clear. But we have a prediction now. I'm marking your words here, and I'm going to blame you if it doesn't hit an all-time high in 9 months. No, I'm just kidding.
yeah.
But
Well,
that's no, what you said really makes a lot of sense. Now, I like you to if to take a little bit of time, if you will, to elaborate a bit on the hash rates and what, because some of our new viewers out there maybe are new to crypto and perhaps don't understand the hash rate thing so well. So does it mean basically that just like transactions are going faster? Does it mean more people are using it? Could you sort of explain in more like layman terms what the hash rate exactly is and what it means for the market going forward?
well, in really simple terms, hash rate refers about how much power, let's say how much mining equipment it's mining Bitcoin. You know, it's in the blockchain. So in the recent years, we have Bitmain, which is the main manufacturer, and the main mining machine was the S9. But they're really low on hash rate right now. There's new machines like the T17, which produce more of this hash rate, which is the power to solve for people that is first home user, is the power to solve a problem, like a Sudoku problem. And the first guy who solves the Sudoku problem, they will get the block reward every 10 minutes, correct? So hash rate injected into the mining is it it means that there is more computers trying to solve this problem. There is more users trying to solve this Sudoku problem. And therefore, it means that there is more institutional investment because right nowadays, these mining farms, what they're called, they're really expensive and they require a lot of budget to build, these facilities. So that means we're seeing a rise on this investment to support the Bitcoin infrastructure. Uh, I don't know if I put it in really simple
Okay,
words.
yeah, I think I understood. So basically, if I understood correctly, what you're saying is that now we have a much higher hash rate, thus much, not only is it, like you said, with the institutional investors, with the mining farms, is it a lot more expensive to mine a Bitcoin now? Because, you and I remember back in the days, it was like, you could mine Bitcoin on like a good home desktop at one point. Those days are obviously long gone. It's like, it's impossible really for the average person even to mine a Bitcoin these days. And so thus because like we're having more hash rates, which means more competition, more people trying to mine and compete for these Bitcoins, that in turn along with the halving should theoretically mean that it gets more expensive and more scarce to mine Bitcoins, which in turn increases their intrinsic value. Is that, you think I summarized that somewhat accurately?
I mean, you can still try to mine Bitcoin with your computer, but the chances you get the block required
Right,
are
exactly,
really
yeah.
low. Yeah, no?
Exactly,
So
yeah.
let's say that now the mining, the big mega mining factories, they have it's like a lottery ticket, and they have a lot of lottery tickets. So the chances are to compete with them. It's really hard. You know, it's not anymore like a hobby, but it has become an industry. So it is really hard. And to compete with them, of course, you need the best equipment. Keep in mind also there is the difficulty, it gets adjusted certain number of blocks. So this algorithm that they have to solve, it gets adjusted, it gets solved really fast. So mining companies, they play with this difficulty, and sometimes they decrease it just to get more rewards.
Oh, interesting. I didn't even know that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
that's something I didn't even know. Wow. So that's
Some
something that can influence the market as well. Huh.
Last week there was mining of 16 blocks, whereas it's usually 16 blocks in an hour, where normally they get mined six. And this is because right now all the miners, they want to push block production before the halving to get the most rewards. So a lot of minings that they will be obsolete, they're pushing this to get more rewards.
Oh, wow. So, okay, people are even setting up for it right now as we speak. That's crazy. It's always a good idea also as well to keep an eye on like what the big players, the whales, the institutions and whatnot are doing. Now, I want to take this opportunity to sort of segue this into Indicoin. So, as I understand, Indicoin was around during the last halving. Did you personally at Indicoin experience like let's say more trading volume, more activity, things that would be characteristic of a bull run or no something good happening after a Bitcoin halving? Anything,
After the
anything?
Yes,
Yeah.
after the halving, we see an increase of transactions, of course. I believe our mission is to. There is a lot of adoption going on, and we want to make for this halving is to make the first time users to make them to buy Bitcoin as easiest as possible. So we have a really fast onboarding process for first time users, and we want to have the adoption in the market for it, we've seen in the last halving, we've seen an increase in the medium term, a couple of months after the halving, and we expect the same for this halving, but with a little bit more of demand. Why? Because as you know, and as Paris told, there is more adoption now. There is institutional investment. I mean, almost in the news, you hear about Bitcoin every day. So it's more mainstream, let's say now. And we want to get on board with it. And we want for first time users just to, like put your email address, your phone number, and then you will get Bitcoin for the first time. Because 4 years ago, it was really complicated. You have to go to an exchange, create an account, all this process. And now we want to make it simple because sometimes this is the hardest part in our industry to explain how is Bitcoin for first time users. We want to make it really simple.
Yeah, yeah. So basically, as go back to what Ferris talked about earlier about how no one could send money to Syria, but with Bitcoin he could, and this just facilitates and makes the onboarding process a lot easier. So, are there any final thoughts or maybe a presentation or anything else you would like to share about Indicoin before we move on to Amir?
Well, just I don't have a presentation, but you can, if you have a project, we are supporting new startups, new projects
Oh,
in the
all
crypto
right.
industry. We want to expand to new markets. So if you are a startup project, or if you want just to get your customers to buy Bitcoin with you, just send us an email. You can find me on LinkedIn and on my email address, and I'm sure we can have a chat and collaborate in the future.
Okay, sounds great. And of course, if someone just wants to simply use Indicoin, buy crypto, especially right now, we'll leave you the website link and all that. Definitely use it, guys, if you are planning to buy crypto to stock up for this halving event. I personally have used many exchanges, and I gotta say, Indocoin was the easiest, most stress-free one. As you said, 5 minutes and that's it, and none of the
Correct.
really complicated headaches that a lot of other exchanges give you. All right, thank you very much, Luis. Learned a lot once again, and we
Thank
will
you.
move on to we will move on to Amir now. Amir, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great, thank you. How are you doing?
Good. Good to have you here. Good to talk to you again. So we've been working together with CryptoMood for a while, and I, of course, know a decent amount about CryptoMood and have had a great experience. Learned a lot as well from using this app myself. The past, what is it, a couple months here or so. So why don't you start off by just sharing anything you would like about CryptoMood, any past experience, and also talk about maybe, because at CryptoMood we specialize on market sentiment. Maybe you have something interesting to share about how the sentiment's reacting to the halving right now.
Thank you for introduction, Ezra. Yeah, so with CryptoMood, it started somewhere between 2016. I think at that time, I've been heavily involved in developing custom solutions for Forex brokerages. So I was in more like traditional finance, but I was checking the news articles and the social media, and we saw that crypto price is heavily much affected by market sentiment. So it means when somebody influential writes something on a Twitter or posts something very important on Forbes or New Wall Street Journal, it has significant effect on long-term price of digital assets. And with this idea, we started CryptoMood somewhere in start 2019, and it is sentiment analysis tools powered by artificial intelligence for analyzing market fundament and market sentiment for cryptocurrencies. And we extract data from more than 50,000 different news sources, which includes social media sites such as Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, or news sources such as, there are plenty of them, Wall Street Journal, for example, as I mentioned. And what we do is we automatically analyze these articles and posts from this media, and algorithmically we can say like this article tells or writes about Bitcoin in positive or negative way. And so we released a mobile app and web application and the API to allow developers to extend their trading strategies using this data.
Okay, and so, it's powered by artificial intelligence, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Cool. So yeah, and I've not only been working with the app, but I've used it myself, and it's really interesting. And one point I really want to highlight here is it cannot be understated, or let's say it can't be emphasized enough, just how important sentiment is when we're dealing with an early market like crypto, where basically we're still at a point in crypto now. I think everyone here would agree that we're in still the speculative phase. So there's not that much adoption of crypto yet to justify the current prices, but it's more about like sentiment. So basically, since we're all crypto markets are basically completely speculative now. Like when somebody buys a stock, for example, a lot of it's based on the stock's actual performance. But when people invest in cryptocurrency, of course, part of it's just hoping they'll get rich, but part of it's also due to what crypto could potentially bring in the future. So because like we're still in a very early speculative phase right now, sentiment's even more important. I remember back when the Chinese president Xi Jinping just tweeted out something in support of blockchain technology. He didn't buy it. There was no like Chinese rushing to buy it or anything. It was just one politician saying one thing, and boom, the price of Bitcoin shot up like $3,000 the next few days. So it just goes to show like how important sentiment is. Now, talk a little bit about, so we are connected with CryptoMood very intimately, 50,000 different sources using some of the most cutting AI technology in the industry right now. What are these 50,000 sources telling you about the sentiment as we go into the halving year?
Currently, we got very like crazy ride on social media and news sites. So I can share you my screen with the presentation. I'm very sorry, but the presentation is very brief because I didn't have much time to prepare it. But I have some figures here. So let me know when you can see my screen.
Everyone see it?
Okay, perfect. So what you can see right now is article sentiment comparison. To clarify one thing, articles in general have zero sentiment, but we created our own like metric. We call it market impact, and it tells you like if the article, if it has zero sentiment, what is affection on the price. So for example, if article is about hacking some crypto exchange, or there are some issues with the technology, we can analyze this article and say like, yes, this article will have negative or positive impact on raising price of cryptocurrency. So here in the chart, you can see Bitcoin sentiment or Bitcoin market impact sentiment from 2016 and 2020. Red line is moving average of article sentiment, and blue line is moving average of Bitcoin price. So as you can see, the articles were talking relatively positive about Bitcoin, but this year it's a bit different. Like we got these up and downs because nobody knows what's the current situation, because the situation now with Bitcoin halving is different than it was last time. As gentlemen before me mentioned, there are different instruments, there is different market adaptation, but also what is different is that Bitcoin was never in the situation facing the upcoming, let's say, financial crisis. With this lockdown, we don't know what's going to happen on the market, and we can see the same thing in the articles. Everybody's speculating what might be the effects on the stock falls in the US on the Bitcoin. Now we can see some correlations, heavy correlations in price drops, but we don't know the future. So as you can see, this is crazy ride here in article market impact, but it's a bit different in social media. So here you can see the blue line is moving average for the Bitcoin price, and gray line is moving average for social media sentiment, and they are pretty much same. So
Okay, wow.
social media are reacting very lookalike as it was last time. So we can assume that the general public will trade or will have the same behavior on the market, but news are showing different stuff. And what is also interesting, it may be tied in with market adaptation. These are keyword comparison between years 2016 and 2020, and proportionally they are very much the same, but there is only one difference, and that is word halving. It never appeared like in 2016 the same way as it is now, because now it is like in top 5 mentioned words on social media and articles, and it wasn't before. So it may show us that the market adaptation or awareness in society is higher, and the general public knows better, like there is something called halving. Last time they didn't knew about this, so it's a bit different now.
Wow. Okay. So we can see even directly that like this halving is, as you go, I think one common thing I've heard from all three of you here is that this halving is going to be like any other. We don't know exactly how it's going to be, how end result's going to play out, but we can definitely say this halving is different, and that's really interesting because that just the fact that social media has a big impact on this, because also in the early days of Bitcoin, I think part of it is due to the fact that social media back then wasn't as popular as it is today. And I think it really highlights a lot of the usefulness, the utility of CryptoMood as well, given that, everyone who's tried trading has had an experience where they heard some positive news article, bought a lot of coins, because of that article, and immediately, the market dumped after that and they got burned. So this really goes to show, I think, on a deep level of just how many things can factor into the price of something. And so that's really, I think, next level technology stuff. So anything else you would like to add about CryptoMood, or just any other general thoughts on the halving?
I can tell you that we are now preparing a new upgraded application, mobile application. Right. And also we got upgraded terminal, which is now available on exchange.cryptomood.com. Let me show it to you here. So it got new upgraded UI, which is faster. We allow to watch more than 3,000 different cryptocurrencies. So those are here on the left side. And also we connected it to our co-product, which is called Well Trace. We are now watching the transactions between the exchanges and from exchanges to private wallets. So these are the current situation in transaction field, let's say. And on the right side, you can see all those news articles popping out. And so this is a single place where you can watch social media, news articles, transactions, and sentiment in the same place.
Okay, wow. And I've used it a couple of times myself, but the new features look even more interesting. Definitely going to try them. Amir, can you give us a timeline as to when we could expect the new features to be to go live?
It will be during this month.
It will be during this month. Okay, so perfect timing, just in time for the halving. The next question, based on previous halving trends, is it best to just sell Bitcoin prior to halving and reinvest when the price is likely to drop, or just hold throughout? Okay, I think this question is quite similar to the previous one. So respectfully to the audience member who asked that, I'm going to go ahead and pass on this one. Next one after that, how do you think the world will change at the time of the Bitcoin halving following this upcoming one, like halving 2040? Will crypto already be widely adopted by then? Okay, do any of you want to make a prediction? Do any of you have a crystal ball and want to take a look into the answer this question?
I mean, if the central banks are going to keep printing money and the countries will keep inflating their currencies and so on, I think Bitcoin would have a great place to be in the end, like gold and any other commodity that you can use. But instead Bitcoin, you can actually use it, so to say. But there's one thing, is that Bitcoin in the end, I think the year 2140, which would be the last Bitcoin mined, it would work on fees, right? So, I mean, it doesn't really matter in 2040 what would happen, if it's going to be really used or not. I mean, if it's still there in 2040, I think it's something really big. It's not like what we see now, because it can't move 20 more years and still say the same something, just people are trading around instead of actually using.
Right. Yeah, and hopefully by then there's enough actual scalability solution so it's actually usable. Either that, or another who knows, another altcoin could rise to the top as well. All right, let's take a look. Okay, so I guess the last one we have for now. If you would have to pick one thing from the cryptocurrency world that can be improved, which one would you pick, either in the level of development or community? I'll start. I'll just say, I wish that scalability solutions would improve, because this is a great technology, but it would be nice. Luis, you mentioned earlier, it's not per se to be something you can buy coffee with, but it would be nice if one day it could get to that point. That's just one thing I personally would like to see. Who would like to? I think this would be a good question for each of you to answer. So whoever would like to start, what would you like to improve about the cryptocurrency world?
If I may start, I would say the most important thing for me is technical infrastructure, because once it is very easy to buy Bitcoin for also for elderly people, it gets higher adaptation and then the price goes up. So usability goes in hand with infrastructure, adaptability, and so on.
Okay, right. Anyone else want to chime in? Whoever's next.
Well, I agree with the mayor. Adoption is one, and second one, which is always the point, is regulation. I would like to see how governments make it more easy and more friendly for our institutions to adapt. You know, because right now we're seeing a little bit of battle between the crypto projects or startups or the industry itself and the governments. You know, to have a regulation. Mainly probably because they don't understand how it works. It takes some time for to the Senate and everything to understand. But I would like to see that the governments are more friendly with the crypto adoption. That's what I would like to see.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, agree with that as well. What about you, Faris?
I mean, if I may add in, I would say it's stable, to be stable. The market should be stable so that it can be used. Like, sure, if there's lots of knowledge, lots of technology and so on, people can buy it, it's good. But if it's still going up and down every day, it's not something you can really use. So it needs stability in the end.
All right. And just to quickly follow up, how do you think you can achieve that? Is it just a matter of more adoption and more people using it?
Sure, well, that would be one point. But in the end, as long as more people are using it and using it for something, physical, not only trading, I would say that would be one way to stability of the price of Bitcoin. Right?
Okay, right. Okay, so we have stability, scalability, infrastructure, and more government-friendly regulation. The usual of what we hear in the community. All right, so we've had a few new interesting questions come in. There's 4 more questions from our audience, and then we're gonna wrap this up. So we'll just do this quick rapid fire. How do you think the coronavirus has impacted investment into Bitcoin and other cryptos? I want to ask you specifically about this, Faris, given that you specialize with investment side of things.
So if you look at any pandemic or crisis in the financial markets, people will start looking at safe place to keep their money, right? No one wants to lose money. And as far as I'm concerned, Bitcoin currently doesn't really look like something a safe haven is. Like would put money into gold, but then look at stocks. It's also crashing and going up and so on. So it's also volatile. But I would say with COVID, it's always a play of psychology with people, what they think they want. Because if there's no gold to buy and you have only cash, Bitcoin would be a good idea to have, right? Depends where you live. So it just depends on what's going to happen in the end. You can't say that price is going to crash because, COVID-19 or something. Maybe the price crashing because there's not going to be any miners anymore because everyone's, there's not enough manpower. So that's also a pandemic. Then you're going to go back to gold. So everything has an advantage and disadvantage. You can't really say what's going to happen. But in the end, it's always good to have a good basket of investments, whether cryptocurrency, stocks, commodities, and normal fiat, and so on.
Right, and yeah, I definitely appreciate that authenticity. Or we're not just saying, invest all your life savings, buy Bitcoin with everything. It's always important to diversify. That's the first rule of investment. All right, next question. Do you think the next big parabolic bull run, if there is one, will result in widespread cryptocurrency adoption? And okay, before anyone answers, the third question is kind of ties into that, so you can take this one at the same time. And why isn't there more cryptocurrency adoption right now? So who would like to take this? Okay, I can go ahead and start. I have a pretty strong opinion about this as well. I just personally think that with Bitcoin, there's not more adoption just for the fact that it's not scalable enough. And with the more altcoin projects that are scalable, the technology isn't proven enough. With altcoins like EOS or Tron or whatever, Nano. Yes, the scalability is there, but we see random things happen, like 51% attacks, like EOS is having issues with like block producer cartels and whatnot. So with like the newer, more scalable technology, it's not as reliable, and Bitcoin's not as fast. So I just think it's going to take time, and it's going to take someone's going to have to solve the whole scaling issue for there to be more adoption. What about do any of you guys want to add anything to this?
Well, oh, sorry, Torres, you can. Yeah. I believe that there's been an increase on adoption. We've seen maybe not in the US or stable economies like US or Europe, but you've seen a really big increase in South America. I can pinpoint like Argentina and Venezuela, now in Lebanon, and sometimes in Russia as well. Why? Because there is hyperinflation and hard to get to escape out of the national currency, So they see Bitcoin, even as volatile as it is, as a safe haven asset, because it's easy to get it, it's easy to store, So last couple of weeks we've seen an increase of, or also all-time high in number of transactions made in Venezuela, which it clears announces an adoption. And with this economic crisis, with the COVID and the maybe future recession, I think it will be impulse more the adoption of this currency to have a safe asset in developing countries or in countries with economic stability.
Right. Yeah, that's and I have read many reports that in those developing countries who need it, there actually is quite a decent level of adoption, and people are using on a fairly regular basis. All right, so okay, on to our last two questions here. The next one I want to ask Faris again. When it comes to venture capital investment, how have previous halving events impacted the level of investment?
So in the end, what VCs do is they invest in ideas, right, in teams. And it doesn't really matter what Bitcoin is doing in the end, because, if you have a good idea, a good startup going and so on in the blockchain area, for example, it's not really correlated to what Bitcoin is doing in the end, because blockchain can be a lot of other things. You can have blockchain in the logistics area, you have blockchain in the medical area. Bitcoin is blockchain in the financial area. So what VCs think of is, if it's a good idea, if it's something that has a good reward or return on investment after 10 years, then it's something they will invest in. So Bitcoin halving or not, it's not really something that affects it. What affects it is, for example, now Corona, a pandemic. So yeah.
Right. Okay, yeah, definitely makes sense. All right, so I know I said we just had two more questions, but we had just another one come in, so we're down to our last two right now. Promise this will be the last one. I guess our audience is really curious out there, so that's always good to see. All right, so okay, Amir, I'd like to get you in on this question. Haven't heard from you in a while. This question is, why must there be a Bitcoin halving? Is the function of Bitcoin halving to stabilize the price and supply of Bitcoin? What is the Bitcoin halving effect?
Yeah, so it is same as far as mentioned. I thought it, far as you had it in presentation, this nice chart. It has to do with economics to keep the supply and the sellers and buyers on the same side and keep the prices in some reasonable levels. So it is economic question mainly.
Okay, right, yeah. And I know a bit about this myself. Just the fact that, like, as we mentioned, the reason why global currencies, you alluded to this very, oh, sorry, did you, Amir, were you saying something?
Nope.
Oh, okay, all right, I just heard something then. All right, so basically with governments printing out money so recklessly as they do today, the fact that Bitcoin's a fixed supply, that we know it's going to be halved every 4 years, we know exactly how many Bitcoins are going to be here today, tomorrow, 4 years, and 100 years from now. It's a huge difference from, U.S. Fed, for example, that just randomly printed $2 trillion out of thin air to deal with this crisis. All right, so final question of this event, and this is a pretty good one, actually. What do you think will be the turning point in changing the government's view before they decide to adopt cryptocurrency or Bitcoin in general? So, Luis, I'd like to get you in on this because you've talked a lot about developing countries and the need for governments to change their view there. So why don't you give us your take on this?
Well, the turning point, I believe, is institutional investment. Now, there has been a lot, but once there is much more institutional investment, which is happening right now, I think the governments will be pushed to actually understand what the whole movement about and agree with it. We've seen it already in certain countries of Europe. Liechtenstein, Switzerland is really open, Estonia, for example. But the main key, and everyone is wondering, is when the SEC in the United States will go to finally a decision, and in terms of Europe. So I believe there's been adoption, new AML laws, like we implemented Know Your Customer, we implemented AML. And in Indacoin, I must recall, we are up to date with certain government regulations and we follow it up to date. So we are, on key with the government. But I believe the push that they need is, I believe, more investment on it, and then governments will have to agree with us.
Okay, yeah. And I just like to add to that as well. Like, I think at some point they're just not going to have a choice because, we see what happens in Venezuela and Zimbabwe and these hyperinflated countries where governments can hate Bitcoin and, demonize it all they want. But when their own citizens are going through just this turmoil now, like they're not going to have any choice if, they don't want to like their whole countries to go up in flames, basically. So, it might just be an issue of even more like government money self-destructing rather than as much as it is about the adoption of Bitcoin. So, all right, that's going to do it for our Q&A session. A lot of good questions out there. So we're going to wrap this up with a few very special treats for you guys in our audience. First of all, we're going to give you guys a free promo code. You can try out the CryptoMood app for free for a month. CryptoMood 2020. It's CryptoMood space 2020, capital C, capital M. Get in touch with CryptoMood team at support@cryptomood.com. That's support@cryptomood.com in order to get your free month off using the CryptoMood app. And just as an extra special treat, we've had a lot of good questions tonight. Four of us are going to select our favorite question. I guess the best way to do this would just be to vote for our favorite question. And the person who asked this is going to get a reward of 100 USD worth of crypto. And again, get in touch with CryptoMood for that. So, all right. So out of all the questions tonight, did any of you have a particular favorite? Anyone particularly stand out to you? Take your time. Feel free to mull it over. Chime in whenever you wish.
Well, I believe the last question I like. It's interesting to see how it's gonna be, how to push the government. So I vote for that question.
Okay, so we have the last question about how when the turning point's going to be for the governments and Bitcoin, basically. All right, let's get you in on this, Amir. What was your favorite question of the evening?
I agree with Luis. I think the last question was very good.
You're going. So, okay, so we have two votes for the last question. Otis, what's your vote? What's your take?
I mean, there's lots of good questions, but I would say one great question was about the coronavirus impact, right? But mainly there was a question if the history will repeat itself, right? After the happening, which you asked. And I think lots of people are asking that question, and it's good It's a good question in the end. People think it's silly, but I think it's a really good question to ask yourself and everyone. So I would vote on that one.
All right. Okay. So we got 1 vote for that question, 2 votes for the last one. So it's a foregone conclusion right now that the last question wins because no matter what I vote. But anyways, I'm going to go ahead and vote anyways. My favorite question of the evening was the one about cryptocurrency adoption. Because as much as we're all excited about the price here, I think what anyone who's truly a crypto enthusiast is most interested in is the day when we can actually use Bitcoin, where we could go out on the street or use any cryptocurrency in our day-to-day lives more often. We can talk to our friends and family about it, and rather than having to explain everything, they'll just be like, "Oh, I use that too." So I'm an adoption buff. I really look forward to seeing more mass adoption. So that was my favorite question. But anyways, okay, the panel has spoken. We have decided on the winner. So the person who asked question. So let me just repeat this question real quick. What do you think will be the turning point in changing the government's view before they decide to adopt cryptocurrency or Bitcoin in general? So whoever asked that, get in touch with us at CryptoMood, support@cryptomood.com to get your reward. So that's going to do it for this event. Thank you all, gentlemen, for your time. I really, really learned a lot. Again, if you guys would like to get in contact with any of these projects, any of these foundations, we will be leaving all the links and descriptions on the video. So that'll be that. So, all right, thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you, Luis, Faris, Amir. Had a great time tonight. And that's gonna do it. So, all right, guys. We'll see you all in the next episode.
See ya.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.